Hey guys, our guest today is Pippa Gawley. She's a general partner at Zero Carbon Capital, a UK climate fund investing in early stage companies that are on a mission to fix climate change through deep science innovation. She worked with eBay in the UK, moved to Silicon Valley, and is one of the rare immigrants as she moved back to Europe, like me. There's a lot we will learn in this episode from Pippa: how to crack the diversity problem in VC and climate tech in general, the level of maturity of the London and UK climate tech scenes, and why there are so few unicorns yet, how Pippa runs a VC fund with her husband, which I have a lot of respect for, and I truly think you will enjoy this one. Pippa brings a unique perspective as a woman fund manager, and it's refreshing. Let's jump right in. Pippa, it's great to have you on Climate Insiders. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
As a starter, could you briefly describe Zero Carbon Capital for those that don't know you? Fund size, geography, ticket size.
Mm-hmm. So we are an early stage investor. We invest in pre-seed and seed stage opportunities where there is a scientific innovation addressing some of the big unsolved problems of climate change. We're investing across the UK and Europe and Israel, and we invest down as low as £100,000 and up to $1 million as our first investment. And then with follow-on capital as well.
All right, and I know the answer, but I wanted to confirm with you to avoid starting the show with a big fail. Alex Gawley, the other GP of your fund, is your husband, right?
He is. I'm so tempted to say brother, or it's just a coincidence, but no, he is my husband. I think we both feel that we're bringing like really different skills and experience to the fund. It's been pretty convenient to be living in the same house during lockdown. We could get on with work.
It also comes with downsides.
Upsides and downsides. So, but yes, we are indeed married, and I think I was just fortunate that when I was looking around and trying to work out who to co-found a fund with, I happened to have the answer under my nose.
All right. And Could you tell us about the dynamics of running a VC fund with your husband? So it feels like an incredible thing to do. For me, not sure I'd be up for the challenge. How do you distribute tasks, for example, and hold each other accountable?
Yeah, and I think we both feel that we can address most of the areas of running a fund. So we tend to divide up the tasks fairly dynamically. At the moment, for example, he's really focused on the fundraising side and the operational side of that. So literally getting investors over the line and managing that process, which is very time intensive, as you know. And I'm focusing more on the company side, so making sure we've got that deal flow coming and that we're supporting our existing portfolio companies through their later stage fundraisers as well.
All right. And you also, another point of your career track that I find interesting, you moved back from the US to the UK. Mm-hmm. And I like to call us, because I'm one of them, the re-immigrants. And what is one of the biggest lessons or insight you brought back with you from Silicon Valley?
Wow. In terms of just lifestyle, just being a bit more positive, the UK can be pretty grey and miserable. And I think we can tend to be quite a cynical bunch. I think, just trying to be a bit more kind of upbeat. It took me 2 or 3 years in California not to just think that everybody was really insincere, because they'd be so positive and so friendly. And I was like, they can't all possibly be this positive and this friendly. And eventually I realized that they were. But it took a while. So, I think we could learn something from that. From a venture perspective, I think just to have a bit more of that big vision. I think every problem can be solved with a business in California, and every business can be a big valuable business, and I think having that mindset is also quite
the mindset,
quite a beautiful
exactly
thing. Yeah.
One word to describe it: the mindset is just the unstoppable drive and the fact that there's no ceiling.
Yes.
In the US. Yeah. When we're self-limiting, there's a bit of an imposter syndrome in Europe. There's all those things that are really limiting.
I think so.
So to fund managers and entrepreneurs, just dream bigger, I guess, as they say in the US.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about the big picture of the climate tech scene in Europe. Mm-hmm. I sit in Berlin. You are in the UK, in Emsworth, south of England.
Don't often hear about Emsworth on a podcast. There you go.
And so the climate tech ecosystem is evolving so fast. It's hard to keep track of all the players in every hub. There's no doubt that London has been the number one startup hub in Europe. And there's still a ton of dry powder coming in 2022, since more than 7 billion euros have been invested in new VC funds in 2021. So startups, get ready. This money needs to be deployed. But could you share some insights from where you stand on what's happening on the climate tech front? Is it evolving as fast as the rest of the tech scene?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's evolving much more rapidly, actually. That, as you say, I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed, even looking back, and you look at something like, cyber or fintech. I'd love to see some graphs on that, actually. Like, did they grow this quickly? Did they change this quickly? It's hard to believe that was the case. Like, when you look at the amount of capital coming into this space, but incredibly, we need more. And so it's kind of chicken and egg thing. We need more capital. We need more companies. It needs to happen together. And I think the changes that we're seeing that we're excited about are that I think 3 years ago when we came back to the UK. We saw a lot of quite light tech kind of solutions. So a lot of website and apps, a lot of kind of energy efficiency plays, and not a lot of the kind of right, we're going to go after cement, steel, direct air capture, that kind of the big unsolved problems. And so we're now seeing more and more of that kind of company coming into the ecosystem. So, really great to see that there are more and more funds who are saying at least that they're not shying away from hard tech, and more entrepreneurs then are kind of being liberated and aligning themselves around that call.
And if you look at you take a snapshot in May 2022, there are 9 climate tech unicorns in Europe and only 2 in the UK. I did the research, actually. 2 are categorized as such. OVO Energy, which is an energy utility company, not exactly young, they're 12 years old. And there's Octopus Energy, which is also a consortium of utility businesses. And they don't exactly fit the unicorn profile that we have in mind. So does that mean that the London/UK climate tech ecosystem is burgeoning with great companies that will graduate into unicorns in the next months or year? Or does that mean that it hasn't reached maturity yet and it will take much longer?
I think yes to both. There are certainly companies that are, commanding pretty high valuations and going up very rapidly. But from where we are, it would be quite a big ask, I think, to make unicorns in the next few months. It's undoubtedly going to happen, though. So I see, the rounds are getting bigger, the valuations are getting bigger, the ambitions are getting bigger. It's definitely going to happen.
And now switching gears and looking at it from a fund perspective, do you see a ton of collaboration in the climate tech scene in the UK? And would you say we need more?
Definitely need more. It's one of those kind of findings coming back from the US where, everybody's so collaborative there. And we felt that, because the market is growing so rapidly and everybody's got that mindset of positivity and kind of working together. I never had that feeling of anybody saying, right, this is my deal and you can't look at it. And you definitely get that from some investors in the UK. So I think we've learned who we can be collaborative with and who to be a bit more careful around. Investors across the whole system. I would love for everybody to be more collaborative and kind of respectful of each other's kind of work and who's going to be the best partner for each company, but equally working together to make sure that company is well served by the capital and the support out there.
And so you talk about collaboration on the deal flow level. Is there any other area that you can think of? For example, impact assessment.
To give a shout out to, for example, Extantia, who are a later stage fund in Germany, they are LPs in our fund, so that we can supply them with early stage deal flow. So it's really fantastic that we are now kind of really interested in being symbiotic, and that it's in our interest to give them great deals and vice versa. So we can really work together. So I think there's something in that as well, that if a fund has is able to have a fund-of-fund strategy and they're able to bring in institutional capital that can support earlier stage funds, I think that's a great area for collaboration.
It's great you mentioned them. They're sitting here in Berlin. They will be on the show as well. So
fantastic.
Guys, stay tuned. It's great that you invest in UK as a fund of fund. And
I know you've spoken about that before, and I'd love to dig in. How do we enable more outliers, female, diverse backgrounds to become fund managers?
Yeah, it is such a problem in this space. When you look at the numbers, it's really shocking. There are some great groups out there working on this kind of thing. So people like Diversity VC and the Future World VC. So they're doing things like helping people to get internships in venture capital companies, so that wouldn't necessarily otherwise be able to access those internships. And I think that's critical because we often talk to our portfolio companies about diversity, and they'll say things like, well, we're looking for scientists, and we just got all men applying, and that's just what it is. And I'm like, well, no, you can't have a conversation with the people who aren't in the room. And if you really believed it would unlock the performance of your company, like another 20-30%, as the research supports, then you would be trying harder to find these people. You would be casting a wide net. And I think it's the same thing from a VC perspective. It's incredibly hard to start your own VC, as you know. So I think anything that that the incumbents can do to support different voices to come into this space, whether it's internships, support, advice, investment, deal flow sharing, I think it's kind of incumbent upon us to do that. And I think that there's a role that for systems level change as well. I think there's a role that governments need to play there to really support first time fund managers better.
Exactly. So I wanted to double click on that one. What has the highest chances of leading to a rapid result, right? In more diversity? Is it a top down or a bottom up, meaning institutional investors, public funds, governments being forced by their shareholders to invest more in women or diverse backgrounds? Or is it us, the community, to influence, so more bottom up, influencing a broader set of people that it is accessible, it can be done, and sharing more tools, insight, tricks to become, for example, angel investors, or to inspire more female to become startup founders?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there around the community, like the responsibility of the community to inspire and support different founders, different investors. And there's a ton of guidance out there for people who want to kind of educate themselves around that. But ultimately, in our case, for example, if we talk to an LP and the LP has got a strategy around wanting to support women founders or women GPs, then that's a really good positive signal that can go out there in the market and might inspire somebody to form a fund that might not have considered that otherwise. And those LPs could be institutions or family offices or individuals, or it could be the government. I think government regulation is a very heavy-handed tool that should be used sparingly. That's certainly the belief of the current government in the UK. And I think there's more that could be done with incentives and kind of trying to align those market forces. Like our government, as does the European Investment Fund, supports early stage funds as an LP. If they had something that was more of an explicit mandate around supporting underrepresented GPs, that would be a great thing. But for example, we chose not to work with them because they limit you to investing only in the UK, and we didn't want to do that. So I think there's kind of it's a really multifaceted, multi-layered problem that we can't solve, I think, with one silver bullet. But yeah, I think that systems level change does need to come from everybody in the ecosystem fundamentally believing that they will get better performance if there's a diverse team making the decisions.
Do you want to give a shout out to a few that have already gone under that path? Or?
What's in terms of founders or LPs?
In terms of LPs?
Yeah. I don't know of any really that have made that their explicit strategy.
Yeah. That's also a good reality check.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a nice thing? There are funds for sure that are looking for underrepresented founders, like Ada here in the UK. And there are several in the US which are doing really fantastic work. But isn't that kind of a sad thing that we need a special fund to invest in female founders? It's just that, but that's where we are,
That's right. I see it block by block, right? It's a pyramid. With the top of the pyramid, the LPs, there are no dozens or hundreds. I don't see a huge shift coming from that top level. So it has to go layer by layer. And I feel like the idea of starting with angel investment, right? Opening it up, democratizing it, demystifying it, as you said before. I've heard you say that before, so that more women, and they will do fantastic angel investment. They just have the values in the right place, and they have all the skill set that is necessary to be a good angel investor. As you have hundreds or thousands doing that, they will naturally graduate into fund managers eventually.
Yeah. You know, and I think there's lots of angel groups that focus just on women as angels and as founders, you know, like Astia, Academy in the UK, Hameza, you know, all doing great work. So, you know, I feel like that what almost needs to happen is that original inspiration. You know, that was what happened to me, that I was sitting there with all the right tools to be an angel investor, you know, had access to some capital and had like the technical background, had the financial services background, professional background, and I was living in Palo Alto, which is, you know, like, literally you can go to a coffee shop and people are talking about term sheets. And, you know, it still didn't occur to me. You know, I needed somebody to point out to me that actually I'd make a great angel investor, and, you know, kind of, I absolutely loved it. And the rest is, you know, that's where we've got to. So, you know, I think we almost need some kind of outreach program of like people to go out to friends and say, hey, have you thought about angel investing? And, you know, kind of come to this event, you know, find out more. Because I think, you know, you mentioned imposter syndrome and confidence. And I think a lot of women would just sit there going, oh, I know nothing about finance. You know, I wouldn't know where to start. And, you know, we need more of that encouragement. I have a side project called 513 where I'm working with 2 other female clean tech investors and a bunch of amazing female investor scouts. And we're trying to do that kind of thing, like have events to inspire people to become angel investors, and just trying to, you know, grease that path.
Great. We'll link everything in the show notes, by the way, for listeners to easily find. And, you know, shout out there, people working on it, you know, feel free to reach out. We want to do something for diversity, something that is practical, that won't take 5 years to implement, something that can take, you know, weeks or months, because it's desperately needed now. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk specifically about VC investment. And I know your stance on software versus hardware. And VCs are notorious for investing in software startups. It's just, you know, the hockey stick curve, higher return. We've invested for 2 decades in software. We kind of know that. And you specifically like to look at hard tech opportunities. Most hard tech climate funds are looking at hydrogen, direct air capture, sort of what has become these days, it's hard to say, but low-hanging fruits.
Yeah.
What are areas do you specifically like to look at? And how do you unveil you?
Yeah, we're trying to find areas which we think are going to be fundamental to that zero carbon transition and that we haven't yet solved. We're also looking for opportunities where we can be additive, right? So you mentioned direct air capture. You know, it feels like the world and his dog is like throwing term sheets at any, like, you know, one person with a slide. It's like kind of like software in Silicon Valley, you know, 20 years ago. It's certainly overhyped. And so, you know, we try and be really honest with ourselves about, like, is this an opportunity where we're actually going to add value? Or are we just going to kind of join in the bun fight for creds? So, you know, and we definitely see those opportunities. We haven't yet made any investments, but we're hoping to do so shortly. You know, hydrogen, again, I think such a huge space. So many different things you can invest in. So we're trying to find slightly more like differentiated ideas. So, you know, we're focusing very much on bringing down the cost of green hydrogen in a transformative way. So, you know, novel electrolyzers that are going to be fundamentally cheaper, transportation, storage, etc. But also trying to find things which perhaps are like slightly less invested in. Like we're looking at an industrial hardware company at the moment who are looking at hydrogen leakage, the problem of hydrogen leakage, which is like not something that is on a lot of radars, I think, and the issues of hydrogen as a greenhouse gas, indirect greenhouse gas. So, you know, we're trying to find some of those slightly different opportunities that are open to us because we have a more technical background and we love talking to engineers. And
well, this is a good point, right? How do you invest in a hard tech business?
it's a small team, right? Do you consult external advisors or have a technical committee or a scientist that you ring,
so
when you run duty?
Yeah, so I studied manufacturing engineering. My husband, astrophysics. We're trying to hire now people who have like complementary areas of scientific knowledge, particularly the hot areas of climate change solutions. So, biotech and electrochemistry in particular. Anybody out there? But, at the end of the day, we can't possibly hope to cover everything from a fundamental expertise level. So we go as deep as we can, kind of with the companies initially, like digging into their tech and doing our own desk research, and then we'll get to a point where we're pretty sure that we want to invest in the company, and we get a sanity check from an expert, or ideally a few experts. We work with a network of people who are scientists in different spaces, and also a really excellent company called Revener here in the UK, who they have a team of 35 scientists, and they have a deep network. So whenever I phone them and say, do you know anybody who knows about metal organic frameworks, and they're like, yeah, and they'll find a proper deep expert to kind of sanity check what we don't know.
Revener, ER.
So it's REVENA.
NA, Revener. Again, everything linked in the show notes. We're going to make it practical for folks. Very insightful. Good to share. And now to understand how your brain functions. And you've seen Silicon Valley. They like to quickly sponge up a ton of intel and make snappy decisions. Give us one area where you have completely changed your mind over the last 2 years. It's just evolving so quick. You were not sold, and now you're sold, or vice versa?
I think I'd have to pick on direct air capture. I think, I was not, we originally thought it sounded like a good idea and something that was going to be needed because of, our inability to act over the last 50 years. And then, it's become such a loaded area that I think we've had to, really rethink about how we engage with it. So, I think we still think it's necessary, but we're really focusing on the technologies that we think are going to be the most beneficial from a scale perspective. I think, in a kind of related way, like the point source capture. So that's carbon removal as opposed to carbon capture. We're very hesitant about, actually, because of the whole moral hazard space. So, we try and we haven't yet been convinced by anybody that there's a great argument there. That we're going to need to do carbon capture from a polluting industry, and there isn't a better way of solving it.
Interesting. So you're specifically looking at mitigation, solving or cracking our bigger problems today, but it really looks like we're the gigatons out there that have already been, issued in India. We need to somehow crack that as well. And
again, if we could stop emitting tomorrow, we wouldn't need to. But it's obvious that we're obviously not going to.
There's inertia.
So the laziness of the human species means that we're going to need the carbon removal as well as everything else that we're doing. The interesting thing is, like, from a cost perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, it would be much cheaper just to stop emitting and to find better solutions. To have spent the last 50 years finding solutions on how to do that, but we didn't. So we are where we are, and the fact is that there's people who will put money into carbon removal that aren't willing to put money into stopping emitting. So again, the logic doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's where we are.
I have the impression that people, technologists, especially Silicon Valley, that kind of drives a lot of trends, right? They love looking at enormous technological issues, and science fiction is a bigger driver than boring tech. So when you look at geoengineering and solutions that are really crazy and could definitely alter the climate to the worst, seem much more enticing and appealing than great technology or boring tech.
Yeah, you're right. And I think people love the idea of a silver bullet, right? Oh, I'm going to have this white box. I'll put it on my ceiling, on my roof, and it's going to fix the problem. And of course, that's not going to happen. So, but I think it's our human nature, isn't it?
And do you have a story to share on one of the biggest learnings or failures since you launched Zero Carbon Capital? Something that that you think should be diffused to avoid other people from making some mistake?
So I think, one thing I think that we really did right was raising a small fund, just kind of raising what we could from personal connections and angel investors and getting out there and deploying it. But the mistake of that as well, that you end up getting pigeonholed as this teeny fund that can't do follow-on investments and can't lead a seed round because it's just too small. And now we're trying to kind of go out and undo some of those assumptions. So I think it's, you kind of don't think, I think at the outset, how you're building a brand. And some of the things that we did to build that brand, like the kind of companies we chose to support, we're 100% happy and proud to stand behind. But I think it's now difficult to go out and kind of rewrite the story around, we only invest in the UK and we only invest at this stage. So we're now trying to get out there and correct that message. So I think if I was going to start again, I would have more clearly lined out that we're starting here and we're going here, rather than trying to rewrite it with hindsight.
Yeah, that's true. Labels are very sticky, and your fund size is also your strategy. People label you as a micro VC fund in the UK, and it's very hard to unstick that. And same goes for a bigger fund, right? That might struggle, might take much longer, it might take years to raise. But if you're labeled as 100 million plus, you want to attract the same LP, right? The same investors that don't do smaller ticket. It's a bit of a balance to find. I want to jump into our rapid fire round.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am.
Great. First question is generalist or specialized. How would you categorize zero carbon capital, and what kind of funds do we need more from now on, in your opinion?
I think we're specialist, and I think we need more specialist funds. I think, when you get general investors trying to, rapid fire, I'll stop.
No, that's great. That's great. Carry on. I'm actually curious.
I think when you get generalist investors who try and invest in things like direct air capture, I think you get that kind of price inflation and people focusing on solutions that aren't going to scale and don't make sense from an energy perspective or cost perspective. I think there's many more examples of that as well. So, I think specialist funds build up the network, build up the knowledge, and kind of learn from those mistakes, right? To say, we've looked at 50 companies in this space and this is the best one, rather than, this is our first direct air capture company and it looks great. So, I think there's a real difference there.
And I actually, a follow-up question is, one enormous fund versus 20 medium-sized fund. What is more likely to drive the most CO2 reduction and positive impact in Europe, in your opinion?
For me, it's the smaller funds. We need the follow-on capital for sure. But the problem is, I think as funds get bigger, they can only write bigger checks. So they then can't support the early stage opportunities, and they're not willing to take big risks. So I think if you have a lot of smaller funds, they can kind of focus and specialize and support earlier stage companies better.
Now, talking about investment decisions, contrarian versus consensus. How do you run investment decisions internally? You're only two on the board on the investment committee?
So at the moment, we're just two. We are growing. We are consensus driven. So like if either of us didn't agree, and that's part of our due diligence process, is that we have to convince the other one. And we're very brutal about holding each other to account and very honest in the way that you can only be when you've been married for 20 years. So, I think that actually really helps us. We're not going to agree to pacify the other person. We...
Even if it pisses off Alex for dinner?
There's definitely been ones where, I've pushed it through or he's pushed it through, with the depth of our conviction. But, part of our job is to build that conviction in the other person.
And now, last question. One Tesla versus 100 startups. What is realistically more likely to drive the most CO2 reduction? I'm obviously taking Tesla as to demonstrate scale. But do you think it's going to come from grassroots, smaller companies, or one enormous home run?
There's no so for in terms of what's actually going to achieve the carbon dioxide mitigation effect. this comes back to the kind of there's no silver bullet. It's going to take every single person, every single company, every single government to like genuinely believe that like this is the greatest opportunity of the next 100 years, not like this enormous cost that we all have to bear. And that's when we'll start to see the real change happening. All of the big companies need to change. All of the little companies need to change. And they will have a different part to play in that ecosystem of innovation.
To conclude this show, Pippa, for people that would love to work, to get an entry into a great climate tech startup or even work for a climate tech VC fund, where would you advise them to look?
Oh, there's so many great networks that are springing up. Actually, there's loads. I mean, there are a lot in London where I'm probably the most familiar with the networks. So, like London Climate Connection. There's then for the underrepresented founders, there's Us 513 and Climate Mosaic, both which has a chat group and meetup. So I think those are really great sources. There are from the VC side again. There's various different WhatsApp and Slack groups and channels, which are, all pretty open and collaborative. So I think those are great places to start in terms of, building connections and kind of finding out what's out there. In terms of kind of getting up to speed with what's going on in a particular industry, I think, again, there's such a wealth of knowledge out there on podcasts, which are really good at, discussing the latest issues and kind of how people on the inside are thinking about them. So that's certainly what we do and kind of what we'd hope somebody was doing if they wanted to get into the space.
And this is what we're doing right here.
Yes.
So thanks so much, Pippa. This has been great to have you on the show and to collect all your insights. There's a ton of data that we need to post in the show notes, so I'll make sure to do that. And to all of you, don't forget to subscribe. We have an incredible lineup coming soon. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.